At 52, I signed my own execution papers with a pen that didn't wobble. Thomas Bradley. Tom to anyone who's known me longer than 5 minutes. 52 years old, and I'd just spent 15 years building the backbone of Apex Century's entire operation. That distributed prediction engine running across 47 data centers? Mine. The fault-tolerant protocol handling 47,000 requests per second? Also mine. But let me back up. You need to understand how I got to that conference room with that pen in my hand. 3 months earlier, Howard Caldwell called me into his office. Howard, the CEO. The guy who used to grab beers with me after product launches back when Apex was just 3 people in a dream. I'm sorry, Tom. They've gone with someone else. Someone else. Not better. Not more qualified. Just someone else who happened to be married to his daughter. The board felt we needed fresh perspective at the VP engineering level, Howard said. Couldn't look me in the eye. You understand. I understood. I understood that 15 years of loyalty meant nothing when family politics entered the picture. Instead, they brought in Austin Pierce, 34 years old, Stanford MBA, married to Howard's daughter Natalie, could talk a good product strategy game, but couldn't read a stack trace to save his life. Day 1, Austin called a meeting. Strategic Evolution was the title. I knew right then we were in trouble. I sat through his deck like a man watching his house burn while everyone pretended not to smell smoke. Decentralized efficiency, resource optimization, legacy architecture realignment. That last one was about me. Legacy. Like I was a floppy disk someone found in a drawer. We need to move fast, Austin said, clicking to a slide covered in buzzwords. Tom's monolith approach worked for version 1, but we're in a microservices world now. Boomers built walls. We build APIs. I didn't argue. My father taught me something when I was young. He was a union electrician for 40 years. Tommy, he'd say, when someone's already made up their mind, don't waste your breath. Document everything and wait. So I waited. The demotion wasn't obvious at first. Never is. Death by 1,000 polite cuts. My name stopped showing up on critical engineering threads. My 2 senior engineers, guys I'd trained from junior developers, got reassigned to Austin's cross-functional innovation team. No warning, just a calendar invite labeled Org Update. During that meeting, Austin explained the new structure. My team was being democratized to serve the broader engineering vision. I sat there on Zoom like a stranger at my own funeral. Nobody looked at me. Austin started sitting in on my architecture reviews, not contributing, just watching, judging. Once I caught him scrolling LinkedIn during my presentation on database optimization. When I paused and asked if he had questions, he smiled. You run a tight ship, Tom. For now. I'd been at Apex since the beginning, back when it was 3 people in a WeWork and a Google Drive folder. I built the prediction engine in my garage over 2 years before they even had funding. Spent weekends and nights while working a day job at a consulting firm. Missed my son Brandon's 8th birthday party because I was debugging the distributed consensus protocol. And because I wasn't stupid, I didn't just hand it over. I licensed it. Drew up an agreement with a lawyer friend. Terms, conditions, and a clause buried in section 3.4c that said, if they ever terminated me for cause, the intellectual property reverted back to me immediately. My dad's voice again. Read the fine print twice. Sign it once. Never give away what you built with your own hands. Nobody at Apex read that clause. They were too busy celebrating their Series A and planning their TechCrunch feature. The real knife came wrapped in a quarterly planning doc. New project, Horizon Initiative. Same tech stack, same prediction logic, same distributed architecture I'd designed. But this one was Austin-led, and he was presenting it to the board like he'd invented fire. I pulled up the technical specs. He'd literally copied my variable names. My comments were still in the code. I confronted him in the hallway after a stand-up. Austin, Horizon is my architecture. You didn't even change the function signatures. He laughed. Tom, you're too close to it. You can't scale emotion, man. We need fresh eyes to take this to the next level. Fresh eyes or your name on the patents. His smile disappeared. Careful, Tom. You're not irreplaceable. That night, I sat in the garage until past midnight. Linda found me staring at the old licensing agreement, the one from 15 years ago when Apex was still finding its footing. Tom, come to bed. They're going to fire me, I said. Not lay me off. Fire me. For cause. so they don't have to pay severance or honor the stock acceleration. How do you know? Because that's what you do when you want someone gone and you're too cheap to do it right. And when you have a son-in-law to protect. She sat down next to me on the workbench, her hand on my shoulder. So what are you going to do? I looked at section 3.4c. Clean, notarized, airtight. I'm going to let them. She didn't understand then, but she would. The next day, Austin moved my desk. Not metaphorically. He literally had facilities move my nameplate and workstation to a desk near the server room, the corner where interns went to cry and old equipment went to die. Then came the systematic dismantling. My senior engineers reassigned, my projects redistributed. My sprint reviews suddenly had legal CC'd on every email thread. Austin started adding notes to my status updates, concerned about velocity stagnation. Request clarification on ownership of version 1 logic. Recommend performance improvement plan. He wasn't just pushing me out. He was manufacturing a paper trail to justify termination for cause. I played along, smiled in meetings, hit my deadlines, but I also started documenting. Every Slack message that felt off, saved to a personal archive. Every meeting I was suddenly excluded from, noted in a spreadsheet with timestamps. Every performance metric Austin redefined without warning, screenshot and filed. I called the spreadsheet Timeline of Hostile Actions, backed it up in 3 places. Then Melissa from HR pulled me aside. We met in a conference room on a Friday afternoon. She looked genuinely uncomfortable. Tom, I shouldn't be telling you this. She glanced at the door. But Austin's been laying groundwork with Howard and the board. They're positioning things. Positioning what? To move you out. For cause, if possible. They're building a case that you're resistant to change, that your architecture is holding back innovation. Austin's been documenting every time you push back on his ideas. There it was. For cause. Not a layoff. Not restructuring. Not even a clean severance package. They wanted to bury me with documentation that made it look like I'd failed. Like I was the problem. I sat in my car in the parking garage for 20 minutes after that conversation. Engine off. Just me and the sound of my own breathing. They wanted to erase me. Take my 15 years of work, stamp Austin's name on it, and sell it for $220 million. But they didn't know about Section 3.4c. And I had no intention of telling them. My dad used to say, don't fight the big fish when it's fresh. Let it run. Let it tire itself out. Then reel it in when it can't fight anymore. I was going to let Austin run. The meeting wasn't on my calendar. That should have told me everything. 9:04 a.m. on a Wednesday. My badge didn't work on the elevator to floor 7. Had to be buzzed in by Austin's assistant, some kid fresh out of business school with motivational quotes in her email signature. Conference room C, she said. Smiled like she knew a secret I didn't. Inside, Austin, HR director, legal counsel, 2 laptops open, a manila folder with my name on it in thick black ink sitting in front of an empty chair. That folder looked like a tombstone. Tom, Austin started, voice smooth as cold coffee. This isn't easy. That's how you know they're about to kill something, when they tell you it's hard for them. We've reviewed the last 3 quarters of deliverables. Unfortunately, given repeated performance delays, compliance flags, and internal restructuring needs, we have no choice but to terminate your employment. Effective immediately. He didn't blink when he said it. Practiced. Rehearsed. The HR director, a woman named Patricia, who'd always seemed decent, pushed the termination agreement toward me. Her hand shook slightly. For cause, she said quietly, like whispering it would make it sting less. I flipped through the pages. Standard corporate execution. Pages of legal language designed to drown you in blame until you sign just to stop reading. At the bottom, a formal statement declaring I'd failed to meet performance expectations and breached newly established metrics Austin had redefined 2 weeks earlier, without my input, without team discussion, just an email on a Friday at 6 p.m. with new standards I couldn't possibly have met retroactively. No severance, no stock acceleration, no even a thank you for 15 years, just gone. You'll need to sign page 7 and page 12, the lawyer said. Didn't introduce himself. Didn't need to. His job was to make sure I couldn't sue later. Will I be allowed to collect my personal items? Yes, Austin said. There's a security escort waiting at your desk. Standard procedure. Standard procedure. For 15 years of building their entire technical foundation, I got standard procedure. I picked up the pen. Mont Blanc. Expensive. Ironic that they'd spring for a nice pen to fire someone they claimed wasn't performing. My hand didn't shake, didn't hesitate. I signed my name on page 7, then page 12. If they were expecting tears or a speech about injustice, they were going to be disappointed. "Just so we're clear," Austin said as I stood up, leaning back in his chair like he'd just closed a good deal. "You'll get nothing from the $220 million acquisition. The IP belongs to Apex. Your contributions are appreciated, but the non-compete and IP assignment you signed when you joined covers everything." He smiled. Actually smiled. I looked him straight in the eye. Didn't blink, didn't flinch. "I understand," I said. And I did. I understood perfectly. He thought he'd won. The walk back to my desk was the longest 200 feet of my life. People peeked over monitors, some looked away. A few newer engineers who didn't know the history just kept typing. My old team lead, the one who'd been reassigned 3 weeks earlier, caught my eye from across the room. She mouthed, "I'm sorry." I just nodded. The security escort was a young guy, probably 25. He looked more uncomfortable than I felt. "Take your time, sir," he said. At least he had manners. I packed my things into a cardboard box someone had thoughtfully provided. One coffee mug with a faded Apex logo from the Series A party. One photo of Linda, Brandon, and Rachel at the beach, back when the kids were still kids. One stress ball shaped like a server rack that a vendor had given me years ago. 15 years fit into one box. As we walked past the product roadmap wall, I saw them. Version 6 mock-ups, the ones I'd sketched on a legal pad during a flight to Austin for a client meeting, back when I still took client meetings. They'd been digitized, cleaned up, and rebranded. Horizon 6.0, the banner read. Revolutionary predictive architecture. Revolutionary. Right. Austin's name was listed as chief architect on the spec sheet below it. The security guard saw me pause. "You need a minute?" "No," I said. "I've seen enough." Outside, the parking garage was dim and cool. I sat in my car for a while. Didn't start the engine. Just sat there with the box on the passenger seat, looking at nothing. My phone buzzed. "Linda, how'd it go?" "They fired me. For cause. No severance." Silence on her end. Then, "Come home, Tom, in a bit. I need to make a call first." I pulled up my contacts, found the number I'd saved 3 weeks ago, Patricia Reynolds, attorney at Reynolds Legal Group in Palo Alto. She specialized in IP disputes. We'd spoken briefly after Melissa's warning, just a preliminary conversation. Feeling things out. Now it was time to move. "Ms. Reynolds, it's Tom Bradley. We spoke last month about a licensing agreement." "Mr. Bradley, I've been expecting your call. They terminated you?" "1 hour ago. For cause. I have the paperwork." "Excellent. I'll need you to send me everything. The termination letter, the licensing agreement, and any documentation you have about your work on the core technology. How soon can you get that to me? I have digital copies of everything. I can send it today." "Good. We'll file the reversion notice immediately. Section 3.4C is very clear. The moment they terminated you for cause, they lost the IP rights. They just don't know it yet." I drove home. Didn't speed. Didn't cry. Just drove like it was any other Wednesday. Linda met me at the door, took the box from my hands, set it down, hugged me without saying anything. "I'm okay," I said. "I know you are. But you don't have to be okay right now. I'm going to the garage for a bit." She knew what that meant. The garage was where I thought, where I built things, where I'd spent 2 years creating the algorithm that made Apex worth $220 million. The licensing agreement was exactly where I'd left it. Bottom drawer of the metal filing cabinet in a fireproof document sleeve. I pulled it out, laid it on the workbench under the LED strip lighting I'd installed myself. February 3rd, 15 years ago. Notarized by a public notary in San Jose, 2 signatures, mine and Howard Caldwell's back when Howard was just a hopeful founder with an idea and no engineers. Section 3.4C. In the event of termination for cause, full intellectual property rights shall revert to the original grantor, effective immediately upon notification of said termination. 23 words that were about to detonate a $220 million deal. I photographed every page, front and back, the notary seal, the signatures, uploaded them to 3 different cloud services, then scanned them and emailed the full packet to Patricia Reynolds. Her reply came back in 6 minutes. "Received. This is enforceable. We'll file the formal reversion notice with their legal counsel tomorrow morning. Do you know if the acquisition is imminent? I typed back, due diligence phase, probably 46 weeks from closing. Perfect timing. They'll discover the IP issue right when the buyer's lawyers are doing the deepest review. Mr. Bradley, you've just become a very expensive problem for Apex Century. I sat back in my folding chair, looked around the garage. This was where it all started, where I'd built the first prototype on a salvaged server rack, where I'd tested the distributed protocol using 3 old laptops networked together. My dad's old toolbox sat on a shelf in the corner. He'd given it to me before he died. Tools are just tools, Tommy, he'd said. It's what you build with them that matters. And always, always keep the receipts for what you built. I'd kept the receipts. Now it was time to present the bill. The first bug appeared 3 days after they escorted me out. Angela from QA texted me from her personal phone. Tom, something's wrong with the prediction accuracy. Error rates jumped 18% overnight. Do you know what happened? I didn't reply, but I knew exactly what happened. Without me and my senior engineers, the system was running on autopilot, and distributed systems don't forgive mistakes. One misconfigured load balancer, one poorly optimized query, one junior dev making changes they didn't understand, and the whole thing starts to wobble. By day 5, the wobble became a shake. I heard through the grapevine that Austin had called an emergency war room meeting, all hands on deck. They were trying to trace the performance degradation. Problem was, nobody in that room understood the architecture at the foundational level. My old team lead sent me a message on LinkedIn. They're asking for you. Austin won't admit it, but they need help. The distributed consensus protocol is throwing timeout errors, and nobody knows why. I knew why. The protocol had a specific timeout threshold that needed manual adjustment during high load periods. It was in the documentation I'd written, but documentation isn't the same as understanding. You had to know when to adjust it, by how much, and what downstream effects it would trigger. Austin didn't know, his team didn't know, and I wasn't going to tell them. A week later, a second text from Angela. We lost a major client. They're citing performance issues. Austin is blaming infrastructure debt from the old architecture. Infrastructure debt. That was rich. The old architecture had been running flawlessly for 6 years. The only debt was Austin's incompetence. But I stayed quiet, watched from a distance, documented everything I heard through back channels. Meanwhile, Patricia Reynolds was building the legal case. She filed the formal IP reversion notice with Apex's general counsel on a Monday morning. Certified mail, digital confirmation, impossible to ignore. Apex's legal team didn't respond directly, but I saw the signs. Howard posted on LinkedIn about navigating unexpected challenges. The VP of Engineering suddenly updated his title to Interim VP of Engineering. Austin stopped posting entirely, and my name disappeared from the Horizon 6.0 press materials they'd been preparing for the acquisition announcement. They were in crisis mode. They just didn't know how deep the crisis went yet. I called Daniel Cooper, old colleague from my consulting days, now working at a firm that did technical due diligence for M&A deals. We'd kept in touch over the years. He was good people. Daniel, remember that conversation we had about IP licensing a few years back? Long pause. Oh, that conversation. You finally pulling the trigger? Already pulled. They fired me for cause last week. Section 3.4C just activated. Jesus, Tom. That's... okay. Who's the buyer? Can't tell you directly, but you'll know when you see it. Big deal. $220 million range. Tech sector. Due diligence phase should be starting soon. Another pause. You know I can't do anything improper. I'm not asking you to. I'm just saying, if you happen to be doing due diligence on a certain company, and you happen to see a licensing agreement with unusual reversion clauses in the IP registry, you might want to flag it for your client. That's just good practice, Daniel said carefully. Exactly. Just good practice. 2 weeks passed. I stayed home, worked on updating my resume, though I wasn't sure I needed it, spent time with Linda, had dinner with Brandon, who was working at a startup in the city, helped Rachel pick out furniture for her new apartment. Normal life, except nothing felt normal. Then the email came, not to me, to Patricia. She forwarded it with a single line, "It's starting." The email was from Nathan Lang, lead counsel for the acquisition buyer. Subject line, "Urgent IP clarification required." Inside, a list of questions. When was the core prediction engine developed? Who holds the original IP rights? What documentation exists for the licensing agreement? Has there been any change in IP ownership in the last 90 days? That last question was the kill shot. Last 90 days. They knew. Patricia replied to me, "Someone on their due diligence team found the reversion notice. They're spooked. Apex hasn't responded to their questions yet, which means Apex Legal is in full panic mode trying to figure out what to tell them." I allowed myself a small smile. The trap was working. 3 days later, another development. An intern at the buyer's firm had flagged an anomaly in Apex's IP registry during routine document review. Buried on page 87 of a vendor audit report was a single-line item. Algorithm license conditional use, grantor T. Bradley. The intern added a comment in the shared due diligence document. Unusual grant structure, needs clarification on IP ownership status. That comment triggered a cascade. Junior associate to senior partner to lead counsel to the buyer's CEO. By Friday afternoon, the deal room had gone quiet. I know this because Daniel sent me a text. Just 3 words. "You magnificent bastard." Austin tried to contain it. I heard he'd sent multiple emails to the buyer's team. Minor administrative issue, documentation oversight, being resolved by legal. But you can't unring a bell. Once the buyer's lawyers smell blood, they don't stop until they've seen every document, every signature, every clause, and Section 3.4C was right there, notarized. Legal, undeniable. The buyer's technical team started asking questions too. If Tom Bradley built the core engine, and Tom Bradley is no longer with the company, who maintains the architecture? Who understands the distributed protocol? Who can guarantee system stability? Austin's answer, "We have a strong team in place." Their follow-up, "Can we speak with them?" That's when Austin realized he had a problem. The strong team was either junior engineers who didn't understand the system, or reassigned engineers who resented him, or former team members who'd already reached out to me privately asking if I was hiring. I wasn't hiring yet, but I was taking notes. By week 4, I could feel the pressure building. Investors were asking questions. Board members were having private conversations. Howard had stopped posting on LinkedIn entirely. And then Patricia called. "Tom, they want to meet, not Apex. The buyer, their lead counsel wants to talk to you directly." About what? About whether the acquisition can proceed at all. They're trying to figure out if there's a path forward that doesn't involve walking away from $220 million in sunk costs and due diligence fees. What do you think? I think they're going to ask if you'd be willing to negotiate, maybe license the IP to them directly, maybe come work for them instead of Apex. And what should I say? That depends. What do you want, Tom? I thought about that for a minute. Thought about 15 years of loyalty repaid with a security escort and a cardboard box. Thought about Austin's smile when he said I'd get nothing. Thought about my name being scrubbed from the work I'd created. I want them to sweat, I said. I want Austin to realize exactly what he threw away. And then I want to walk into that building one more time and show them all what they really bought. Patricia laughed. Then we wait. Let them come to us. And when they do, we negotiate from strength. How long? Not long. They've got investors, timelines, and a technical foundation that's actively degrading. They'll reach out within a week. She was wrong. They reached out in 3 days. The glass conference room on the 7th floor was exactly as I remembered it. Transparent walls, polished table, $800 chairs, a view of the city skyline that was supposed to make you feel powerful. It was 10:15 a.m. on a Tuesday. The buyer's team had flown in that morning. 3 lawyers, 2 technical advisors, and their CEO. They sat on one side of the table with their matching leather portfolios and bottles of imported water. On the other side, Howard Caldwell, Austin Pierce, Apex's general counsel, 2 board members I recognized from the holiday parties I'd stopped getting invited to. Nobody had revoked my building access. An oversight, probably. Or maybe they figured a fired employee wouldn't have the nerve to come back. They figured wrong. I stood outside the glass room for a moment, watched them through the transparent wall. Austin was on slide 6 of what looked like a 12-slide deck, pointing at charts, smiling, confident. Howard sat at the head of the table, nodding along, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he kept glancing at his phone. I pushed open the door. Every head turned. Austin stopped mid-sentence. His mouth hung open for a second before he recovered. "Tom." He tried to smile. "This is a closed executive session." "I know," I said, walking to the empty chair near the middle of the table. I set my messenger bag down, unzipped it, pulled out a binder, 3 inches thick, tabs color-coded, every page numbered. "Before anyone signs anything," I said, looking directly at the buyer's CEO, "you should probably see this." I slid the binder across the polished table. It made a soft sound against the wood. Nathan Lang, the buyer's lead counsel, didn't reach for it immediately. He just looked at me, then at Austin, then at the binder. "Mr. Bradley," Nathan said carefully, "you're no longer employed by Apex Century. This meeting doesn't concern you. This binder says otherwise." Nathan pulled it closer, adjusted his reading glasses, opened to the first tab. The index page was simple. Foundational IP Grant Agreement. Thomas Bradley to Apex Century, February 3rd, 15 years prior. He started reading. His expression didn't change at first. Then his eyebrows rose slightly. Then he flipped to the next page faster. Austin leaned forward. "Tom, what is this? Some kind of stunt?" I didn't answer, just watched Nathan read. The room was silent except for the sound of pages turning. Nathan stopped at page 4, read it twice, looked up. "Is this notarized?" "Gold seal is on page 7, I said. He turned to page 7, studied the notary seal, the signatures, the date. "Howard," Nathan said quietly, "did you know about this?" Howard shifted in his chair. "About what?" "This licensing agreement. Section 3.4C, specifically, the reversion clause." "That's ancient history," Austin cut in. "Tom signed a comprehensive IP assignment when he came on full-time as an employee. Everything he created belongs to Apex. Our legal team confirmed it." Nathan looked at Apex's general counsel, a nervous man in his 50s who suddenly looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. "Did you confirm it?" Nathan asked. The counsel cleared his throat. There was an IP assignment document, but we've been unable to locate a signed copy that specifically supersedes this earlier licensing agreement. Unable to locate, or it doesn't exist?" Silence. Nathan turned back to the binder. "Read section 3.4C out loud. In the event of termination for cause, full intellectual property rights shall revert in full to the original grantor, effective immediately upon notification of said termination." He looked at me. "Mr. Bradley, were you terminated for cause?" I pulled out a folded document from my jacket pocket, unfolded it, slid it across the table. 3 weeks ago. Signed termination letter, page 2 specifies, "For cause termination based on performance issues." Nathan took the letter, read it, his jaw tightened. "So this clause has been triggered." "Triggered and executed," I said. "My attorney filed formal reversion notice with Apex's legal counsel 18 days ago. Certified mail. They signed for it." Every head turned toward Apex's general counsel. He nodded weakly. One of the buyer's technical advisors spoke up. "Wait, if the IP reverted to Mr. Bradley, then what exactly does Apex own?" "The brand," I said, "the customer list, the office space, the employees, assuming they stay. But the core prediction engine, the distributed protocol, the architecture that handles 47,000 requests per second across 47 data centers? That's mine. Always was. I licensed it to them with conditions. They violated the conditions." Austin stood up. "This is insane. You can't just walk in here and blow up a $220 million deal because you're bitter about being let go." "I'm not blowing it up," I said calmly. "You did that when you fired me for cause. I'm just explaining the consequences." "Howard," Austin turned to his father-in-law. Tell them this is just Tom being vindictive. We can fight this in court. We can—" "Austin," Howard's voice was quiet, strained. "Stop talking." The room went silent again. Howard looked at me. Really looked at me. For the first time since this whole thing started, he looked like the guy I used to know. The founder who'd sat in my garage 15 years ago, watching me demo the first prototype on a cobbled-together server rack. Tom, Howard said, did you know, when you signed that termination agreement? Did you know this would happen? I knew the clause existed, I said. I wrote it into the licensing agreement because I wasn't stupid. I'd spent 2 years building that engine before Apex existed. I wasn't going to just give it away with no protection. But we've been using it for 15 years. We built a company on it. You licensed it for 15 years, under specific conditions. One of those conditions was that if you terminated me for cause, the license ended. You chose to terminate me for cause instead of doing a clean layoff with severance. That was Austin's strategy to save money and protect himself. Austin's face went red. You built a paper trail, I continued. Performance flags, compliance concerns, new metrics I couldn't possibly meet, all designed to justify a Forcus termination. Your HR director even warned me it was coming. You documented it beautifully, Austin, made it airtight, except you never read the original licensing agreement. Nathan closed the binder, looked at the buyer's CEO. They had a silent conversation with their eyes. The CEO stood up. Gentlemen, we need to recess. Our team needs to discuss this privately. Of course, Howard said. His voice sounded hollow. The buyer's team filed out. Nathan took the binder with him. As soon as the door closed, one of the board members exploded. How did we miss this? How? Did legal miss this? We didn't miss it, the general counsel said defensively. It was in the files, but it was 15 years old. We assumed the employee IP assignment superseded it. Did he sign an IP assignment? There was an onboarding packet. But he flagged the IP section, said it would duplicate the existing license. There's an email thread with HR. Nobody followed up. Nobody followed up on a $220 million question? Austin slammed his hand on the table. This is sabotage. Pure sabotage. We can sue him for what? I said. Enforcing a contract you signed? Using a legal clause that was clearly written and properly notarized? You fired me, Austin. You triggered this. Not me. Howard put his head in his hands. Austin, please. Please stop talking. The door opened. Nathan stepped back in alone. Mr. Bradley, could you step outside with me for a moment? I followed him into the hallway. He closed the door behind us. My client wants to know if you'd be willing to negotiate, Nathan said. Negotiate what? A path forward. They've invested significant resources in this acquisition. Due diligence alone cost them 7 figures. They still believe in the technology, but they need clarity on IP ownership. The IP is mine. That's the clarity. Would you consider licensing it to them directly? Why would I do that? Nathan smiled slightly. Because they're prepared to make you an offer that Apex never would. Chief Technology Officer, direct equity stake, full recognition as the original architect, control over the technical roadmap, and a salary that reflects your actual value. I let that sit for a moment. What about Apex? What about Austin? That would be restructured. Austin would not be in your reporting chain, or in the company most likely. And Howard? That's complicated. He's the founder, but his role would change. The board is already discussing it. I thought about my dad, what he would say. He'd say, don't work for people who don't respect what you build. But he'd also say, know your worth and make them pay it. I'll need to talk to my attorney, I said, and my wife. Of course. We're prepared to move quickly once we have agreement in principle. One condition, non-negotiable. What's that? My old team, the engineers who were reassigned when Austin came in. They come with me, as a unit, with retention bonuses. Nathan nodded. I'll add it to the term sheet. We went back inside. The Apex team looked like they'd aged 5 years in 10 minutes. Nathan addressed the room. We'd like to continue discussions about the acquisition, but the structure will change significantly. We'll be in touch with revised terms by end of week. He looked at me. Mr. Bradley, we'll send over the preliminary offer to your counsel tomorrow morning. I nodded, picked up my messenger bag, took one last look at Austin. He wouldn't meet my eyes. You were right about one thing, Austin, I said. You can't scale emotion. But you can't scale a business on stolen architecture either. Turns out foundations matter. I walked out of that glass room for the second time, but this time I wasn't being escorted by security. I was walking towards something better. 3 days later, I signed the new contract, Chief Technology Officer, 20% above what Austin had been making, equity that would vest over 4 years, full control over technical decisions. My first day back, my old team was waiting in conference room C. Same room where I'd been fired, different energy entirely. "Welcome back, boss," Angela said. I looked around at the faces. Good people. People who knew how to build things that lasted. "Let's get to work," I said. That night, Brandon called. "Dad, I heard what happened, the whole story. That was incredible." "It was necessary," I said. "You taught me to stand up for myself. Took you a while, but you finally did it." He was right. It did take a while. But my dad also taught me that good foundations take time. You can't rush them. You build them solid. And when everything else falls apart, they're still standing. At 52, they told me I was obsolete. At 52, they learned that foundations don't disappear just because you stop looking at them. They hold everything up. And when you try to remove them without understanding what they support, the whole building falls.